I say some of the things I say because I'm just frustrated and I'm in the moment and I'm thinking, damn, what if I didn't do this? And I hate saying, but at the same time, when you know you should have done something and you've underachieved, that's painful.
Lando, I'm sensing that you are relishing fighting the Max Verstappens, the Lewis Hamiltons, and
I don't think I proved myself enough. As a total driver, I don't think I'm at the level of those two guys yet, because they've been performing at this level for way longer than I have.
where do you think you need to improve?
It's just those little mistakes. It's the 1-2 meters. It's the hundredths of a second here or hundredths of a second there. And it's just a collection of all these little things put together.
There was a time when Lando thought winning a race in the fastest car was easy. After the 2020 Portuguese Grand Prix, he said, quote, "He's in a car which should win every race basically. He has to beat one or two other drivers, that's it." At the time, he received a lot of backlash on social media and later apologised both publicly and directly to Lewis. Fast forward 4 years later, and he's in that very position. He has the fastest car, doesn't quite have to only beat his teammate since he's got outside competition from other teams, but he's only managed to win one race out of a potential 7 he could and, let's be honest, should have won. Remember when people made fun of Charles Leclerc for his pole to win ratio? Well, out of the 4 pole positions Lando has achieved in his career so far, he's only converted, well, he hasn't converted any. Furthermore, if we take a look at the number of points scored in the Drivers' Championship since the Miami Grand Prix, Lando is only second on the list despite having the fastest car for a majority of those races. Is Lando a bottler, or are his shortcomings being over-exaggerated? In this video, I want to delve deeper into everything about Lando as a driver and whether he has what it takes to become a world champion. Yep, me and my years worth of experience will provide the blueprint to winning a Formula 1 title. Said experience being one karting trophy from a Daytona event. But trust me, if I had taken it seriously, I'm just saying, Lewis Hamilton wouldn't be the most successful driver of all time. Anyway, enough waffling from me. Let's start with the most important factor in winning a world championship, which is having a competitive car. Yep, that's the boring and most obvious answer, but it doesn't matter how good you are, this is a must. Verstappen ain't winning the championship in an Alpine. This season, Lando does have a solid car underneath him, which is a good starting point. They started the year a bit off the pace of the Ferraris and very far off the Red Bulls, but they've quickly turned that around. Then around the 6th race of the year in Miami, that's when they started to be roughly on par with Red Bull. I mean, you could argue McLaren have been slightly faster, but it's really not by that much. The car's performance, reliability and development trajectory also play a significant role in a Drivers' Championship campaign. We've seen the likes of Ferrari fall away in a championship battle since their development trajectory can waver from time to time. This season, Red Bull also didn't get as much performance from their Hungary upgrade as they would have liked. This presents an opportunity for McLaren and Norris to take advantage, since they've now got a car that is fast pretty much everywhere, and many other teams can now take points off Red Bull and Verstappen. The door is still open for a comeback. Next up, I want to talk about out-and-out one-lap speed. Lando has shown some very impressive raw pace in qualifying, often beating his teammate Oscar Piastri. Although having said that, the Australian is starting to come into his own, and will start becoming more of a problem in the upcoming races. Qualifying is where a driver can really showcase their skill behind the wheel in extracting as much out of the car as possible. And in this regard, Lando has been very strong. For instance, let's look at the qualifying gap between him and Oscar this season. On average, Norris has only been 0.08 of a second quicker than his teammate in the dry, which says a lot about the potential of the Australian. I'm going to be doing a video on him soon, but just know, I think Piastri is that guy. Once he irons a few things out, I believe he has higher potential than Lando does. I honestly do. But so far, Norris has had a very slight edge on him on a Saturday. Also, that lap he put together in Barcelona was phenomenal. It's just unfortunate he conceded the lead on lap 1, but we'll talk about that more later. On the whole though, Lando's qualifying speed is undoubtedly a huge strength, and if he wants a shot at beating Verstappen, he's going to need to be flawless every single Saturday from now till Abu Dhabi. Now let's talk about consistency. I'd argue the second most important attribute a driver must have when fighting for a championship. Over the course of a long season, it's usually the more consistent driver that wins, barring any reliability issues though. Things change if one driver experiences more bad luck than another, but in general, and especially nowadays with the cars becoming more and more bulletproof, being consistent wins championships. Lando is relatively good at this, since he's always been there or thereabouts and frequently finds himself on the podium. He's been able to deliver solid results week in and week out, even when things haven't been going perfectly. However, there is a difference between being just consistent and being consistently great. You can be consistent and always finish in P4 or P3, but if your car is capable of winning all of those races, then being consistent means achieving the maximum result every single time. Max is consistently great. Well, apart from those days where he just completely loses his head. On the other hand, Lando has thrown away race wins on multiple occasions now. Since Miami, McLaren on the whole have had the stronger package, but they've oftentimes decided to settle for second best this season. Contrast that to the mentality of Red Bull and Verstappen, who literally want to win everything, and it's clear that Norris won't beat him unless McLaren have a dominant car for the remainder of the year. A lot of people have been talking about how McLaren aren't supporting Lando in this year's Drivers' Championship, that the decision in Hungary was a mistake and they should have let him win the race instead of Oscar. And while I don't disagree that the team managed that whole situation extremely unprofessionally, they are still supporting him in other ways. First of all, they've provided a strong car for him, weekend in and weekend out. Their pit stops for the most part have been on point as well. They consistently give the Red Bull pit crew a run for their money. What hasn't been so great though is their strategies. I mean, leaving Oscar out in Silverstone during the first crossover, then the whole Hungary mess as well. You can tell they haven't fought at the front for over a decade because this kind of operation won't win championships. In addition, Max Verstappen is a one-man band. He doesn't have a competitive teammate taking points off of him. But Oscar most definitely has the potential and the capability to take a lot of points off Lando, which is fine if their aim is to solely win the constructors. But if they want to win the drivers, they're going to need to start giving Lando priority in pretty much every way, just like Red Bull do with Max. I remember back in 2022, Charles basically got laughed at when Ferrari weren't supporting him as much as he needed. Oh, but now all of a sudden, just because Norris is in that same position, more people are complaining about the fact that he doesn't have that backing than they did for Leclerc, man. What BS, man. I'm out. I can't deal with this anymore, man. Okay, I need to compose myself. I'm still not over that. I'm interested to know what you guys think though. Do you feel that Lando deserves to be given number 1 status at this point, or is it too early? Be sure to leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Wet weather skills are another essential attribute of a champion. Racing in the rain requires a unique blend of skill, bravery, and finesse. Lando has shown his prowess in these conditions, particularly in the sprint shootout in China, where he was a full 3 seconds faster than Oscar in the wet. Now, of course, Oscar didn't really get it together on his final run, so that gap is a bit exaggerated. But still, while others were faltering, Lando was flying. He was over 1.2 seconds clear of Lewis Hamilton, who qualified second, which tells you all you need to know. That was a performance for the ages. His race in Canada was equally as impressive. In intermediate conditions, he made 2 very clinical overtakes on both Verstappen and Russell, but unfortunately he was denied by a poorly timed safety car. Really, he should have won that race, but things like that happen in racing. For example, a similar thing happened to Verstappen in Miami. He was also exceptional in Silverstone's mixed conditions, taking the lead during that period when the track was damp, but still just about dry enough for slicks. Obviously, he couldn't convert that into a win because McLaren's strategy let him down, but it was nonetheless a very strong drive. Wet weather ability is often seen as a hallmark of true racing talent, and when fighting for a title, you're going to be up against the best of the best in the wet. I definitely put Lando up there as one of the better drivers in those conditions. In terms of general adaptability as well, this includes not just weather conditions, but also unexpected race circumstances or a car that isn't performing as expected. A good example is Charles Leclerc again, in Austria 2022, when he suffered severe throttle issues late on in the race, but still managed to win. We haven't seen Lando in a similar situation to this since competing at the front, but I think we eventually will. And in that moment, that will be a true test of his mettle. Up next, let's talk about wheel-to-wheel racing, arguably the most exciting part of this sport. A skill that requires a driver to be brave, precise, but most importantly, smart. When it comes to this factor, Lando is decent. He's had some memorable battles this year, like his deal with Russell in Barcelona. Again, I'll mention Canada because that was brilliant. But his wheel-to-wheel encounter with Max in Austria was a complete mess, from both sides to be fair. Since the McLaren is still quite draggy, Lando had a straight line speed deficit on the run up to turn 3. This is why he kept going for broke with those dive bombs because there wasn't really much choice, and I guess he wanted to also catch Max by surprise. Oh, he could have just waited to pass a turn 4, I hear you say, but that's a much trickier spot to overtake. It didn't help that Max was constantly moving around in the braking zone though. Alternatively, Lando could have done what Lewis did in Brazil 2021 and dummied a move, force Max to use a tighter line in defense, and then try to get a better exit and overtake at the next opportunity. Having great wheel-to-wheel skills can often make the difference between winning and losing. It can be hero or zero stuff. While Lando is really good, I think there's still some room for improvement. It takes a lot of skill to be able to analyze and judge risk effectively in the heat of the moment. Because in your head, you're thinking about so many different things and trying to figure out what's the best way of going around someone while losing as little time as possible. Else, you risk ruining your own race by running in their dirty air, picking up marbles going off the racing line, and a whole lot more. Mental strength is another important factor and ties in quite nicely with the previous section. This is an aspect which isn't possible to actually measure, but from listening to Lando during media interviews, and particularly his recent appearance on Beyond the Grid, he's definitely got the right mentality. Going into every race weekend trying to get the best possible result is the correct approach to have. During other interviews though, Lando can come across as a bit too passive and almost too self-critical. But on track, he's not afraid to do everything in his power to win, which is what matters. However, having that psychological edge over your opponents is so crucial, and this is where I think Lando slightly falls short. For example, his response immediately after the Austria incident was commendable in my opinion. He called out Verstappen for overstepping, but in the press conferences in Silverstone, he seemed to just retreat back into a corner, almost submitting in a way. And I think in that moment, he should have just stood on business and doubled down on his initial stance. Instead, he kind of just said, Max doesn't have to apologize because he did nothing wrong. I'm sorry, but that was weak in my opinion. In that situation, Verstappen gained the psychological edge. Besides this, mental strength also includes performing under pressure. And again, while he has had moments of brilliance, such as his moves in Canada, he's not consistently composed under pressure. And it's that inconsistency which can be a significant hindrance in a tight championship battle. Well, it's not tight at the moment, but it could be eventually. When the pressure is on, champions rise to the occasion. Lando's ability to perform under pressure is still developing, and it's an area where I think he does need to improve to be a serious title contender. The ability to stay calm and focused when everything is on the line is what distinguishes the greats. Lando has shown glimpses of this, but he needs to be more consistent in those high pressure situations. Now, another one of Lando's biggest weaknesses is his starts. He's lost numerous positions at the start of races, including the China sprint, where he just went tumbling down the order. Even in Miami, where he eventually won, he didn't get the best start, albeit he got held up by Perez, who almost eliminated his own teammate. In Spain, he lost the race pretty much at the first corner, but then again, there was a long run down to turn 1, and the McLaren, as we know, is a draggy car. Then more recently in Hungary, he had some technical issues at the start which is a bit unlucky. So overall, him and McLaren combined need to target this as an area of improvement. There's a saying that goes, you can't win a race on lap 1, but you can definitely lose it, which rings very true. But now, more so than ever, leading a race after the first lap puts you at such an advantage. Being in clean air, being able to control the pace, having preference on strategy, these are all luxuries you enjoy while out in front. It's a different skill entirely to be able to hunt down other drivers while still keeping your tyres intact and temperatures down. Coming back to the drag factor of the car, Lando is more likely to struggle overtaking than Max is, since the Red Bull has a pretty decent straight line speed advantage, particularly with DRS. Having a poor start can undo all the hard work done in qualifying, so it's definitely something they'll need to fix in the last 11 races. One thing I've noticed about this year's McLaren is that it seems to be really quick in the last stint of a race. Instances like Imola, Spain, and Austria are perfect examples of this. The Red Bull is usually quicker on higher fuel, but then towards the end of a race, the McLaren suddenly comes alive. This is what makes the whole who has the fastest car debate so complicated, but there's a video in the works for that. Lando has very strong race pace, especially in clean air, but more often than not, he's found himself in the dirty air of another car, which has hindered him quite a lot. This season, he's finished several races significantly ahead of Oscar, proving that he's got the edge over the Australian more often than not on a Sunday. Also, race management includes not just outright speed, but also tyre management, fuel saving, strategy execution, and much more. Lando has demonstrated that he can maintain strong race pace from lights out to checkered flag. Again, compared to the likes of Lewis and Max, there's still another category to be found, but he's definitely not too far off reaching that level. There's still a long way to go this season, a season that has been easily the most competitive since 2012. Multiple teams are in with a chance of winning races now. All that's missing is a championship battle. We're at that make or break part of the season, where Lando and McLaren need to essentially take a clean sweep of victories in order for a comeback to be on. Red Bull and Verstappen aren't going to take it lying down. They're going to be all guns blazing. It's going to be fascinating to watch, and I look forward to covering it as the season goes on. Until then, I hope you all enjoyed, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.